Welcome back to Living from the Inside Out, Life in the Spiritual Lane. This week, Judy Johnson caught up with Mary-Jeanne Tremblay, a psychiatric nurse, for a conversation about meditation and mental health. Let's listen in.
I'm here with Mary-Jeanne Tremblay, who is a meditator of many, many years, lives in the western part of Canada, and professionally works as a psychiatric nurse. So she's got a lot of experience with mental health, and it's lovely to meet you, Mary-Jeanne, to be with you here.
Thank you, Judy. It's a pleasure to have this little chit-chat with you today.
The theme of the podcast is living from the inside out, and I know you've been a meditator for quite some time. I'm wondering how the mental health experience dovetails with the meditation. Where do those two come together for you?
I love the theme, living from the inside out. I often think about when I clean my home, I don't like to surface clean. I do the inside out. I have to clean the drawers and the cupboards before I clean the external. And if they're not in order, then I have a hard time putting the external, the surface in order. And so with that analogy, I kind of approach my life like that. Is if internally inside I'm not stable, I'm maybe worried or anxious about something or irritated by something, and dare I say get angry about things, then that kind of turmoil, or even like busy in my mind, too much traffic in my mind where I'm thinking about too many things externally to myself, that's a busy traffic area then, and it's kind of messy. And so then how does that impact my behavior and how I interact with others? And so the inside out piece, when I look at the people that I've worked with over the years, so I realized I was trying to remember how long I've been working as a mental health nurse, and it's over 30 years, so it's coming on to 35 years of working with people through that mental health and psychiatric lens. And what I find is people want to be genuine. They want to live their truth. And what often gets in the way is the worry, the anxiety, the stressors of life, and not being able to be organized internally. And so the thought of how can meditation, so for me, meditation has been it's been my spiritual sustenance. It has been what's provided that guiding post for me. It's like, people talk about the North Star being a stable point if you're navigating the earth. For me, meditation has been that North Star that has kept me stable and grounded internally. And as a mental health nurse, there are times when there's stories and heavy things that I'm helping others deal with that I need that North Star to process all that information, give it a space to be so that I can take care of myself internally. And so when I think of the vulnerability of the people that I've served over the years in mental health. So if people are struggling with mental health issues, what does that mean? And really, it means many things. But internally, the mind isn't stable. It makes it difficult for people to just do sometimes basic living. So organizing themselves to get nutritious food in their bellies and, manage their personal space and manage, attending to a job or making money or or just engaging with others and having healthy relationships. And it's on a whole spectrum. And there's many things that can impact that. Our health and well-being, I like to use that word now rather than mental health, because it gives some autonomy back to the individual, in that it gives hope that stability is possible. Well-being itself just is a much more positive word, and although broad, is actually encompasses the whole being, rather than the mental health, which is all about that psychological and mental side of our being. So it's limited. And it doesn't mean to minimize the medical community for what it's there for, because it definitely has a place in supporting people that are really, really ill, whether that's a medical crisis like cardiovascular problems or endocrine problems like diabetes. When we're talking about mental illness, we can be talking about more serious problems like psychosis, schizophrenia, mood disorders, depression, bipolar mood disorder. And so those kinds of things, they require a specialized medical connection to the medical system. But then there's the softer, the subtler, the high anxieties, the worries, the depressed states that can lead to major depressive disorder. However, there's baby steps until you get to the bigger problems. And so meditation in itself, I'm going to back up a minute. In mental health across the world, it has been acknowledged that the skill of mindfulness is one of the gold standard tools that are taught now. They're taught, the cognitive behavioral therapy is still a foundational skill set that is taught to individuals to help them learn to manage their thoughts and their emotions. And then when it gets more complex, because we know things aren't so black and white in our world, is that the more complex issues of what is the nature and character of myself and how am I processing information, mindfulness comes in to kind of slow the track down a bit, allowing people to be able to focus and attend and recognize what's going on for themselves. And so it's a skill set that is now taught in most mental health centers. And it's coupled with emotion regulation, distress tolerance, and there's exercises and skills taught with that. And from my perspective as a meditator, is that meditation mindfulness is helpful to slow things down, organize things. Meditation allows me to go deeper, to understand myself. And that can be useful for anyone. If someone is dealing with a mental health issue, slow and steady wins any race. Slow and steady. So if somebody is struggling, with something personal, whether it's anxiety or depression or confused thoughts, and they try and meditate and they find it difficult, it's doing it in small increments and being able to take glimpses of the self. Because I know even for myself, sometimes when I'm more worried or anxious about something, I can't sit in meditation near as long. And so then I'll do what I can to get a drop of peace, to get just to help my mind settle a little bit so that I can tend to things in a calmer, thoughtful way. For people with mental illness, more serious mental illnesses like bipolar mood disorder, schizophrenia, thought disorders, and what I mean by thought disorders is when the thinking becomes so different from, like, it lacks logic and sometimes reality-based. So sometimes the thoughts can become diluted, and then the person is like fear increases, and because they're perceiving the world in such a way that's creating negativity and fear internally, and then in turn behavior follows that. So a person who's paranoid and fearful is going to be hiding behind, whatever. They're going to be pulling back, withdrawing, or they're going to maybe be aggressive if someone's too close in their space. If somebody's having that much disturbance internally, mindfulness is a better choice. Being able to just observe their thoughts and be able to talk to a professional. I mean, really, when things get that disorganized in the thinking and the way of being, then there is a need for probably a professional assistance. And so as a meditator, if I came across that, I would be more inclined to have a good spiritual conversation with someone. Kindness, open, willing to just accept the person where they're at, but have no expectation of teaching them meditation. I mean, and if the person's showing a desire, this is where backing up and actually being able to give some clear ideas, but keeping them brief and short, where a person can learn to sit with themselves for very short periods of time.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's wonderful information and very thorough, and you're obviously very experienced and knowledgeable of this whole, you just took a whole world and shrunk it down into a little bite-sized piece. It's quite amazing, actually. I'm wondering I don't know that there is an average person out there. We're all dealing with all kinds of different things. But when we sit to meditate, we may have thoughts that are coming from an unusual place or that aren't positive or that maybe loop a little bit. How do you know the difference between when you're just dealing with regular negative thoughts because you live in a world that's generating negativity, and when something inside of you maybe needs a little more attention or more knowledgeable attention?
Right. That's a great question. It is true. When we do sit down to meditate, the busyness of the busyness of my day has to get cleared. So it's like checking it and putting it in its little boxes. Now, I have that ability most of the time. But I have had my own experiences where something's worrisome or troublesome in my life, and I'm not able to actually meditate. That is taking over my thoughts. That's the closest I can relate to someone who may be having more disturbing or negative experiences. Some of my meditator friends who have shared with me, things around disturbing thoughts that have cropped up or take over sort of, and then questioning, like wondering about their own experience and what's truth and what, why is this coming up? A big question, why? Because we think, I think there's this, I'm going to call it a myth, and then I want to do a myth buster. The myth is that if I'm sitting down to meditate, I'm going to have instant peace, instant calm, instant transformation, instant change. Meditation actually does not work like that. It works to help me understand myself. It works for me to get to know myself from the inside out. And so that's a journey. That's not a destination. And it's not like I have a headache, I take a aspirin and it goes away. It doesn't work like this. Meditation starts to give little drops of learning to be with myself in a comfortable way and start to shed light on who I am, how I am, and how I engage the world. And then where do I get my power? Where do I get my energy? And so for someone who's having disturbing thoughts, back to your question, is how do they know that that's okay or not? Mm-hmm. If there is a need for reality checking, it's always, that's where like some basic questions, or having a conversation with a more senior meditator, and being able to say, this is and share your experience. Meditation is a very individual thing in terms of my personal experience. But when there's questions, being part of a community, being part of a bigger whole, and having mentors or senior people to go to becomes really, really important. And so out in the world, it could be a family friend, it could be a close friend, it could be a family member, a companion, a spouse, it could be your doctor, it could be a counselor. But having somebody to actually have a discussion about those internal experiences helps one to navigate that and find their own truth. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to be that friend, that counselor, or that mentor or senior person that decides for me what's real and what isn't. It's going to be me. And I'm just thinking about something that we've been studying lately, which is keeping good company. Keeping good company means, who are the people I can trust? Who are the people I can actually sit with and be myself? But first off, before I can do it with anybody else, I have to be able to do it with myself. Mm. And so for me, that's why meditation is so empowering. Mm-hmm. And for a person who's struggling with some self-esteem issues, or some self-worth, low self-worth, or, their mental well-being isn't as stable as they would like, then that's where that meditation can be very helpful, right? Learn to get to know ourselves better. But that's where that sense of community comes in, and whatever that looks like for that individual. Being able to connect, to plug in. So know myself and build my community. That community is that good company. How do I, where do I connect, and how do I do that reality checking, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm having negative, uncomfortable experiences, the only way is to share. We have to get it out in order, whether that's journaling. And I mean, some of the other practices can be journaling, can be artwork, can be gardening. It's actually moving the energy so that we can make some sense of it. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we don't live in isolation from others. So finding a safe place where we can reality check.
That's very nice. It's like I can't really tell the thoughts in my own head and their sort of validity, or their level of their impact on me in a negative way all by myself. Sitting there by myself, I could be in my own loop. But what I hear you doing is inviting us to consider, okay, I have a meditation practice. I may be sitting alone to do that, but there is a community in which I could connect and therefore get some feedback, or the community acts a bit like a mirror. I know for inside the Brahma Kumaris, we have this amazing community around the world, and enough senior practitioners that everybody would have somebody to talk to, just to reality check the experience they're having with their thoughts. And that feels very compassionate to me, the way you've been speaking about this. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the time you've taken with us today, just to share your wisdom. It seems so sensible. So I think we may have more questions about this, but for today we'll let you go and say thank you so much, MJ, for being with us.
Thank you, Judy. And I'll just end with, I love the word sensible. So there's a couple of thoughts I have, which is, one is how to come to my senses, and sense and sensibility. Mm-hmm. And those are things we're striving for every day. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you.